Ruth Clare is the award-winning author of the memoir Enemy, a TEDx and keynote speaker, MC and educator, as well as a mental health and domestic violence activist. Her writing has appeared in The Age and The Good Weekend, among others. Before becoming a writer, Ruth was an actor, performing in shows like Neighbours and Blue Hillers. She's currently working on a series of non-fiction mental health books. Ruth, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
You have a really interesting story for our listeners. I would love to hear about how you got your first book published by Penguin, a memoir nonetheless. This is every writer's dream. Can you begin, please, by telling us about the premise of Enemy?
Yeah, so Enemy is a memoir about my experience growing up as the child of a traumatized Vietnam veteran. And it is split into two main threads. One is the child experience told completely from the child perspective, and that is sort of unfolds in a very storytelling style. And it was really important to me that I kept that part of the book purely focused on that child experience and the meaning that the child was making as she was progressing through her life about the way she was being treated. And then I have another non-fiction, so a narrative non-fiction thread where I then do some research on the impact of war on veterans, what veterans went through. I interview veterans, trying to understand their experience and specifically whether or not their relationships with their kids were damaged by their war experience. And then unpacking a lot of psychological studies, exploring PTSD, the nature of how that works in a person, generational trauma, and raising awareness of the fact that families of veterans are also experience the impact of war.
Wow. So a really ambitious undertaking from a creative point of view.
Yeah, it was really, really hard.
Yeah. And the emotional aspect as well. So hard to revisit all that stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, I've had a lot of therapy. Everything in the book is stuff that I sort of have processed multiple times from multiple points of view. So it was certainly not just, like a journal. It was, I definitely wanted it is emotionally charged. That is one of the ways people have described it. And I'm an actor before I was a writer. I'm an actor. So it's really, emotions are something that I'm quite comfortable with. So having done enough therapy and inhabiting the world of emotions as a career, it's an area that I'm more comfortable with than most I'm aware of. So yeah.
What about your father? Did you have his blessing?
He was dead.
Okay. So what about your mother?
My mother had alcoholic dementia. So the advantage of having extreme trauma in childhood is the impact on both of my parents. My dad wasn't there for it to have an impact on him, and I was mindful of trying to be balanced. There was always a part of me being the victim of his violence that, you're aware of that sort of child rage, but I did want to stay curious about what makes a person turn into that type of parent. What are the factors? So.
And can you tell us how the deal came about with Penguin? Like, did you write the whole manuscript, or did you, being nonfiction, just pitch the premise and some sample chapters?
Yeah, I had no idea about the publishing industry, like literally zero clue. I had this sort of idea that you knew the right people, and then someone tapped you on the shoulder and said, "We need you to write this book." And then I don't know. I really don't know what
like how a model is found in a supermarket.
Because I was an actor, I was always like, oh, maybe if I go out just looking great, they go, "You are the girl I need for my." It's the exact same fantasy notion I had as being an author, that I would be, plucked out of obscurity in some way. And so I decided I was going to write Enemy anyway, but I didn't have any writing context. I was a professional writer. I'd been a copywriter for over a decade by the time I started writing Enemy. And so I just sat down and thought, oh, well, I easily whack out 1,000 words for a client. I will just whack out 1,000. I looked up how many words in a manuscript, okay, around 90,000. Fine. I'll set that as my target. 90 days, 1,000 words, I'm done. But no, that was not how that process worked. So I sat down, I joined a writing group so I could get some feedback as I was going along. I felt like I needed to show some people, otherwise it was just all a fantasy in my head. And I committed to writing the book. And during that process, I was at my daughter's gymnastics class, and I got talking to one of the parents there who happened to be a publisher. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm writing a book as it happens." And he said, "Well, I happen to be a publisher." And he said, so tell me a bit about your book. And I was totally unprepared to be, I was in the middle of writing. I hadn't read how to pitch or whatever, but I just started talking to him about some of the things I was finding, and every week we'd sort of see each other, and he became very interested in the story. And then kept saying, "When are you going to show me a manuscript? When are you going to?" And I said, "Well, I'm writing it. I'm literally writing it a lot. That's as much as I can write it. I'm writing it." And eventually I started to get really embarrassed at the idea that it was going to be absolutely terrible. And he was going to go, eventually I would put all this time in, and then he would say to me, "Well, that's rubbish, and go to kindergarten and learn to write." That's, you have the fantasy of how deeply they're going to hate your work. And so I ended up sending it to him, but it was not ready. It was not finished. It was like, there was a couple of, pardon?
Had it been edited?
No. It was like, a couple of chapters I'd, labored over, like had done 20 drafts on with my writing group and whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, I was like, I just wanted a sense of whether or not I was delusional. Really
tough. I know these feelings. Yeah.
And so I then posted on Facebook saying, "Oh my God, an actual publisher is reading this manuscript." And because he kept just putting pressure on me, he kept saying, I want to see it. And then a friend of mine who is an author, he's my neighbor, he said, "I've now contacted my agent on your behalf. And I've told them that you're going to be contacting them. And so then I wrote a quick letter saying, a publisher's looking at my work. I've already received, a text message saying, I can already tell we're not wasting our time. I understand this is not the way you normally work and you might not have time to look at it. But if you think even if you could just say, yes, they're good, go with them. Or if you have any interest, just, I was just like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing here.
Yeah, but if someone gives you that kind of opportunity, you take it.
That's right. That's right. So I didn't, I really didn't understand what an agent was, how that whole thing worked. But then one of their agents, it was Curtis Brown. And so one of their agents read it over the weekend and got back to me on Monday saying, "We're interested in representing you. Don't commit to anything." So I then immediately said to the publisher, I've now got an agent who has basically said, she wants to give me a chance to finish it the way I want. And that was not very popular with the publisher, which is fair enough, wasting people's time. And so then I took it back and then really had time to refine it and polish it as best I could, agonized over every word, did a really thorough proofread, and then she got the book and then sent it out to all the publishers, and then that was when it started a bidding war over the manuscript, which was very, very exciting.
Amazing.
Yeah, like pretty much peak life experience when got the first offer in, and it was so HarperCollins and Allen and Unwin and Penguin and Random House before they were merged, a firm. So I had like all of these, amazing big name publishers, because I really didn't understand what it meant or how you choose a publisher, or I wish I had have had more advice on.
But you had an agent batting for you.
Yes. And she was great. Yeah, she was
Curtis Brown agent.
Well, she is now her own. It was Grace Heifetz from Left Bank Literary.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
How long did the bidding war last?
So what did I do? I'm wondering if I went and sort of met with them. So, I flew up to Sydney, and then I had ones down in Melbourne, and I met with each. I think they'd already sort of expressed their interest, and then I met with all of them.
Were they essentially pitching to you rather than you pitching to them?
Yes.
What kind of stuff did that? Obviously nothing commercially sensitive, but were they promising you the world or anything?
Well, they were showing me books that they'd like. So I got a nice bags of books and whatever that, sort of them sort of saying, these are the types of books that we produce here. This is what I have worked on. And I just like, to me, they were all just kind of extremely impressive, because I was like, I have complete babe in the woods. I had no clue. So they were sort of saying, I really liked this part of your story. And, it was really just, they might ask questions. Are you open to developing this part of the, whatever. And I think also because, I've been had been a copywriter for such a long time. I'm pretty open. I'm like, I don't think that I know all of the answers, and I wasn't precious about my work because I just wanted it to be really good.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're a professional writer, and so you understand the value of having a professional team.
That's right. So so then went around to them, and then so the offers kept coming in, and it's like, okay, well, they're now at this, are you going to go with that? And it's very, very exciting. I became addicted to my email. It was like a drug. It's like you go, oh, this is like gambling. It's like,
the dopamine high would have been surging through your body.
Absolutely.
What year?
It was published in 2016, so it must have been 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you choose the winner?
I was a bit wowed by their offices. I know that sounds really, but Penguin, and I just have a sentimental attachment to Penguin books.
Of course.
Like there's something,
best of the
like
best.
it just felt so fancy. The idea that I would be published by Penguin felt really fancy.
Yes.
And proper.
Yes.
I don't know. I'd heard it, it was the one that I'd heard of the most,
There is just no one better in terms of reputation. They're the top of the tree. I have a Penguin water bottle that I just cherish. It's just the water bottle.
That's right. This is absolutely right. So there's something that just, I don't know, feels really special about Penguin as a reader. Yes. And so naively, that's pretty much, I just went in there going, well, that was, and that, I liked the team. And, they also had one of the differences with Penguin was they had their marketing person in there with me. And because I come from a marketing background, that was really interesting. Everyone else didn't have a team. Penguin was the only one who had a team. And it was really good to hear that the marketing person had read it, and they were telling me how they were going to pitch it and sell it. And so that was a real point of difference for me. And I was interesting. I wanted to sell as many as I could. So having their marketing people in there was actually a influence for me.
Yeah, okay. Heads up, all publishers, myself included. No, get marketing person. Okay. So it wasn't just the dollar signs that they were, that was not the single consideration.
It wasn't the single consideration, although it was a significant consideration. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. You signed the deal.
Yeah.
Then what? Tell us perhaps the journey to kind of publication and what that experience was like, and if it differed from your expectations.
I have to say the publishing industry has, and still does, confuses the absolute crap out of me, because I guess when you're a professional writer and you're writing work for other people, you know that the relationship is that you're a supplier to that business, and so they're your customer and you're there to do what they say. When you enter the publishing industry, you are like a supplier to their business still, but you've produced a product.
Yeah.
So, and then you are meant to be involved in the success of that product, but you are not included in the strategizing about that product, and you're there to do the writing part of it, but you're kept very separate from the marketing part of it, even if you're a professional marketer and you have skills that could help or amplify. You're sort of not given a plan of our ideal case scenario for the effort that you would put in to make this a success is this, 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 and this. We can help you with this, 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 and this, but our advice to you would be do this, 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 and this. It's just kind of like, well, promote it on social media. And it's like, oh, well, my 4 followers will absolutely love that post that I've put up there. They will be really impressed. So
Mum is one of them.
You know, so it just felt like I went into the relationship feeling like they were going to handle everything. And then they sort of started to say, oh, well, so who are you going to get to launch your book? I'm going, what do you mean? You organize who launch? I don't know anyone. I've been in my room for 2 years writing a book and I don't know any authors. So
you're a first-time author. You don't have a community of authors yet. That happens.
And, you know, a lot of people who are
introduce you to.
Yeah, a lot of people who are first-time authors have been through a professional writing course, but I just did it all on, you know, I was self-taught. So
yeah, not necessarily. I mean, it's crossing the threshold to becoming an author is when you get to know these fantastic people.
Yeah. And so then they were like, and who will you get to blurb the book? I'm like, I don't know anyone. I don't know. Do I have to do it? Oh, how awkward. Hi, here's this thing. You probably don't have time to read. Would you like to read it and give me some nice things to say? You know, the whole thing, I was completely confused by it all. And yeah, I felt like I was unclear about what the relationship was. And then there was the whole way through, it's like, you know, leading up to it, I guess I'd had so much sunshine blown up my ass. Oh my God, this is amazing. You're like a really talented, and you're going, oh my God, I think I might be amazing and really talented. And then you're suddenly in this working relationship where you ask a question that you think is like just like a really simple question. And then crickets, what? Did I send that email? Weeks, you know, and so you're sort of in this. And I understand that they might be working on other projects, but there's no communication
around that. Yeah.
It's like, I just get really confused by that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's a weird dynamic.
And it leaves a lot of room for my paranoia.
Yeah.
To enter, oh my God, they hate me. They regret spending money on these, you know, whatever.
Of course.
The paranoia enters, and then it's like, what is this business? This is weird. This is not perfect. This is who waits this long? Who am I to this business? I don't understand I don't understand how it works. I still don't understand how it works. I still don't understand how they operate in terms of that.
Did you kind of see it in a way that they had bought your book? They had purchased your IP, and in the same way, when I buy a jacket at a store, I have no further relationship with the clothing store in a way.
Well,
I take it home and I can put it on my head. They don't.
It is kind of that, except you're still having to have an ongoing relationship with them.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's the
and it is sort of that. And the way that I now see it is that they just fish around hoping for a good fish that lots of people want to buy, and they give you a couple of weeks of their time in the terms of the marketing end of it. And then if it's not an instant bestseller, they just, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's move on. That's
yeah.
And I, because I did receive a good advance, they put in time and effort on my book that they wouldn't necessarily put in if you were a lower cost purchase.
Yeah. Did you earn out your advance?
No.
Okay.
No, I did not. And it was like heartbreaking because, that was a real measure for me of whether or not I succeeded. And it became, in a lot of ways, the only measure about whether or not I succeeded. Like, I won a literary award for my book and I got lots of good reviews, and I had, I started out, and genuinely my intention was to have a conversation I didn't think had been had.
Yeah.
Connect with other people who had been through the same things as I had, to name something I thought was important to name. And that was the genuine reason that I wrote my book. And I would have, I said to myself as I was doing it, if I can help one person, if one person comes back to me, and I got all of these great letters and, all of the stuff that's really meaningful, but it's, it's like we do in life all the time. Suddenly you make this one other thing, or you ignore all of this great stuff that has happened and is happening, and that is actually a more meaningful measure of success. And then you attach to this other thing and go, well, I'm a total failure.
Did someone tell you, oh, you should earn out your advance, or is that something you decided yourself?
No, I didn't even know how that worked. I didn't even know that.
Why did that become so important to you? Was that?
I'm a bit of a perfectionist and high achieving kind of person. And I really like, I was always a really good student, got a lot of A's at school. And so I like to be like in the top percent, like I always it's like that became a thing that was a number that you measure. And so
you want to earn out your advance and have the second print run, third print run, fourth print run.
But also to be, yes, it was a worthwhile investment. It felt like I'd exposed myself in a lot of ways in writing a book, in sharing such vulnerable stories, in owning that I'd grown up in a home with family violence. There's a lot of shame involved in talking about, a family history that isn't a middle class, nice, you grow up with an alcoholic mum and a violent dad. It's you're daring to kind of own a story that is a shadow story in society. Yeah. And so there was already a risk I'd taken with that. And so the lack of validation in terms of how many it sold felt like a judgment from society that keep that nasty stuff to yourself. Nobody wants to read it. It was like all of those voices that were talking to me the whole way through. Yeah. That I had to keep fighting. It felt like, and that the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really difficult. Is that no longer the case?
No. I don't have that, but it took me years of being in that space of feeling really ashamed of the lack of success. Like it really, I was deeply, I felt deeply othered by it, because I didn't feel like I belonged in the literary world in the first place. And then I felt like my stories were ugly and I wasn't middle class enough to, I wasn't whatever it was they're looking for, nice stories. I didn't have a nice story. And that was compounded by the fact that every time I talked about my story, I was meant to give people a trigger warning. And it's like, oh my God, this is just my life. And
yeah, you need a trigger warning. Yeah. It's really difficult stuff. Were they transparent in the way that you got breakdowns of the sales to know that you weren't earning out or selling as many as perhaps the top expectations would have been? Or was it bad news coming after 6 months or a year?
Well, I was kept completely in the dark. I didn't, they didn't say, this is our forecast of what a book that we've paid this kind of advance would be. This is how many we would expect to sell. This is, and maybe that's just because they're trying to protect, you from going, oh, well, that was a bit of a waste of money for their business, you know? So maybe they're trying to, I don't know, or when maybe
so you're just not privy to, you were privy to nothing.
I didn't receive any, you know, and maybe my agent was doing that. It's like, well, what's the point of sending you bad news? Or
so, but when were you getting sales figures breakdowns?
no,
just okay. Wow. Okay.
none.
Yeah.
I didn't get any of it. I didn't see what, now that I got the rights back to the book, and I've self-published Enemy myself. So that exists in the world under my own publishing label. But I still had some time left on my audiobook contract with Belinda.
7 years, right?
So no, I'd done 7 years. So there were 3 years left on that. And so I said, can I get the rights back to my audiobook? And then I was about to enter negotiations of, can I buy back the audio files and then I will self-publish. And they came back to me and said, well, we don't want to give you the rights back, but we're happy to renegotiate for us to publish worldwide. And they suggested going for a 10-year contract, but I'm still, I sort of said, well, what about if you can go worldwide for 3 years and let's see what happens with that. And then I can make, you know, because the whole figuring out self-publishing made my brain explode. Like there's so many steps and that I had not anticipated. So having to then also figure out all of that for audiobooks, and you know, I was like, oh my God, okay, give me 3 years to get some of these ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And then I can have a look at that process then.
Okay. So you've gone from Penguin to self-publishing the same memoir. Tell us about the moment you decided that you wanted to get your rights back, and then how you went about that. And also, well done. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah, well, you know, I know so many authors who write beautiful books and have had their books after, you know, a year or two pulped.
Yes, pulping breaks my heart. I've had my
breaks my heart.
Terrible. It's a terrible thing.
And for me, I understand that I haven't been as effective as I would have liked, but I am a determined person, and I still think this conversation needs to be had. And the fact that it had never been released in America, given that, you know, I am the child of a Vietnam veteran, I am one of, you know, a very small number of people in Australia who are children of Vietnam veterans, but 2.6 million Americans fought in the Vietnam War.
Yes.
And it's not just the Vietnam War. I got contacted 2 days ago by somebody whose dad was a World War II veteran, so he was an old generation, and saying, you know, there's some specific moments in the book. He said, my dad was exactly the same as this. He helped me on one school project, but he used to think that, you know, people who went to university was stupid, that, you know, he did everything with, this was the sort of like, you know, neither of my parents finished high school. So it was, he had the exact, it was amazing. It's amazing to me. You know, there's this idea that I love. And one of the things that I love about memoir in general is the more specific, the more universal. And that for me really rings true, that you have these really specific moments that feel like that's your thing, and it's like that exact thing happened to me. And it just is, I don't know, I find that like magical, one of the connecting parts of writing memoir.
Writing, the comfort and the reassurance that we're not alone.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I haven't, you know, it's a slowly, because when you've got so many spinning plates, I've got so many spinning plates in my head. But I had my first American podcast last week where I was speaking to somebody who is specifically speaking to PTSD affected veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, you know, because part of it's like, well, my gut instinct is that this story really needs to be told.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of reasons why it isn't. And one of those is that there's a lot of shame around PTSD veterans already. So then what, and then what right do you have as the child of a veteran to talk about your experience, even though, if you have grown up in a home like I did, you've got your own complex PTSD from that experience. And everyone's, that whole thing of both and rather than either or is something that I explore in Enemy. But I think the fact that I don't have any parents, that my mum's now dead, so that can be negatively affected. It's not destroying a relationship that exists. It's discussing something in a more abstract, conceptual way.
I mean, gosh, not to have made your book available in America, who is the chief invader of the universe, with so many families affected by the wars that have been fought on foreign soil, seems a bad strategic decision.
Well, it wasn't. See, and I didn't understand about that either. So we only sold Australia and New Zealand rights.
Such small markets.
And Penguin wanted world rights, but my agent was trying to get more money.
Oh.
So they wanted to get that and then sell it there individually as its own. And I would, if I had have known, I would have said, sell them world rights. I want people to read this book. I don't.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not trying to get if I had have known, I would have just said, I want to sell. I want to sell it in America as well. And I realize it might not be, a priority book over there, but I want it available.
Who's to say? You're going to find out, aren't you? And I just think the market there, and also this is ongoing. There are wars being fought. It's just so awful to see. But I see, you see the children and the families affected, and you think, how is this going to play out in 5, 10,
I know.
20 years?
And I now sit on it's a community of practice for intimate partner violence in the veteran community, and so there's a lot of different. So I'm just really interested still in this world. And there was a recent report that one of the academics has written in that group that showed that it's nearly 50% of people who are transitioned veterans, they are in domestic violence situations, 50%. And I think that is part of the way that they don't deal with the mental health, that they haven't calmed their nervous system down, that the way PTSD manifests in you.
Yeah. They're perpetrators.
Yeah, but they're, it's not as simple. I hate the oversimplification and lack of curiosity about, like, do we want to stop the situation? What is driving that behavior, and how can there be such prevalence in that population? And it is because they are trained to override their fight or flight response, to be in control, but all of the stuff that they're trained to do, they need to be deprogrammed from. And they're not given.
This is a Hembury Books title, No Buts, and it's stories of 12 men who changed their violent or abusive behavior, and they tell their own stories about what led to them becoming violent themselves. And I think 11 out of 12 is what they experienced through their parents. And we have to address this to solve the problem.
100%.
I do want to ask about your cover and the book title. I think it's a wonderful book title. It's so simple and powerful. But were you shown your cover? Were you consulted on the design of the cover?
So for the original publication with Penguin, they gave, they sort of asked, have you got family photos? But because my family was so crap growing up, I didn't have that. My mum was, hiding, and she was drunk by then. It was like all the, I just had this. When you have that kind of trauma, you don't have, oh yes, we've got this really wonderful record of all of these great times that we had together.
Well-kept family albums.
That's right. That is not a thing. So I had pretty paltry number of photos that I sent through, and they came back. My husband is an amazing graphic designer. He is an incredible graphic designer, has in fact won, he was, won awards for his graphic design. He's also, was a finalist as a book. He has actually designed a book for a professional publishing organization.
Wow.
And I said, they came back with this book cover that was the worst piece of crap I've ever seen in my life. It was a montage, and anything that is a montage in terms of design means you have not thought about. It's like the same as with writing. When you do a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. There's no unifying concept. It's like, no. It had this awful font. It had like a ring, like a coffee, like they'd left a coffee on it. Honestly,
No.
it was just like, who is buying this? People who
Which intern did this?
people who hate books. Did you want to? Is that who we're trying to appeal? Because this is the ugliest piece of. Anyway,
and you communicated that.
I said to my agent, I will hand back every single piece of money. I will not. I don't care. I will not have that.
My dead body type.
Over my dead body. I just said, just burn it. If that's it, I will just burn the whole thing. No. And I said, I'm like, my husband is a professional. He's a professional. He's not like some, it's not me on Canva. It's like he has like been a designer for, 35 years. He will be really, really good.
And they said,
no, we know what we're doing here. And then they said, they were pissed off. And then they came back with a cover that I also didn't like, but I liked it better than the previous one. And they said, well, that's it. And I was like, okay.
They said, this is your cover. Yeah. I've heard
Enjoy.
This a lot. And that authors actually distance themselves from their book based on how much they hate their cover. What about the title of the book?
The title of the book I came up with.
Yeah. Simple and
wonderful. And it in the newly published version, I've taken it out, but because I've now got freedom to do what the hell I want with it, I'm thinking of putting it back in. So Enemy has 3 descriptions, and because the book is a complicated, has got lots of different threads, enemy means a thing that harms or weakens someone else, and that felt like my mum's addiction. So alcohol harmed or weakened her, she harmed or weakened me. Enemy is an opposition in the time of war. So it felt like my father's story, and enemy is an opponent. And that felt like my relationship with my dad was he and I were opponents.
That's how I immediately took it. I took it from the child's perspective. The obvious meaning is, of course, the enemy on the battlefield, but your enemy, and it just gives me shivers.
Yeah, that's so to me, it was and what I then realized was after I had released that, I was like, oh, maybe I should think about, you know what you do. Oh, well, you've published multiple books, but I had this one book, and I then spent ridiculous amount of time kind of going, let's rewrite the whole thing, going, stop it. I had to stop myself.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, maybe I would look at changing the name, but if I changed the name, then I would lose all the reviews that were attached to it on Goodreads. And so I was like, okay, I surrender.
Yeah, I surrender.
Yeah.
Can you please tell us, someone who's in a similar situation, they want the rights back to their book, what did you need to do to obtain that? You needed to wait a certain amount of time. Can you run us through that?
Yeah, so I was 7 years into a 10-year contract.
Yes.
And I thought, because I realized, I was probably the only one, I would buy copies of my book to sell at speaking events. And
you would buy them from Penguin.
I would buy them from Penguin.
50% discount or something.
Not even. So it was costing me $20 to buy
copies of your own book.
Yep.
$20 a copy.
$20 a copy. Yeah.
Far out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I bought those, and then I realized it was probably, I wondered how many there were left in there, because they weren't going to want to do another print run for something that wasn't selling. And I sort of started to put feeders out of like, how many have you got left? And if you're going to pulp anything, can you please make sure that I get first chance to buy them? And then I'd been listening to stuff on self-publishing just out of interest. I'm always interested in all things, but I started to think, oh, I wonder if I could get my rights back to my book. So I just sent them an email saying, hi, I'm interested in buying back getting the rights back to my book. I would like to self-publish. What is the process for that? Can you tell me, are there any costs, blah, 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 whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they came back and said, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, okay, good. So there really wasn't, in terms of
There was no tussle.
There was no tussle. There was no.
Maybe this is happening more frequently than we know.
I don't know. I kind of, but then with Belinda, it was different.
Yeah, but I know, but this audiobooks are quite different. They have, they're tough.
And it's also just digital. Like, they're not storing a file, and I'm not taking up any place in their warehouse.
I know they shouldn't. It's not equitable to have these 9-year. I was listening to the Selma Book Show. She's just waiting out her 9 year. It's like she talks about it the way people do time in prison. It's so bad. But what did they? So you were 7 years into a 10-year contract, and what, they released your book 3 years early, or?
Yeah, they released it without, and they said, if you want to buy so I needed to do a new cover and blurb and whatever, which was okay by me. And if they wanted, if I wanted to use because Matt was like, oh, if we can get the internal typesetting, that'd just be a lot easier, even if we change typefaces or whatever. And so I sort of said, what would be the cost for that? And it was ridiculous. It was thousands of dollars. And Matt said, I'll just do it. I'll just lay it out. So he just laid it out. It's very fortunate to have a professional designer in your house.
Yeah. I'll build your book, baby.
That's right. And he's a very attention to detail person, whereas I'm not a good attention to detail. I'm a very good big picture person.
Got it.
And yeah, so they just released that, and then there was just a bit of, you agree not to use basically our stuff in it. The words that were always mine, but none of the, external or typesetting, that was sort of part of the contractual agreement.
Yep.
And they said, enjoy.
New ISBN.
So when I published it, I had to get a new ISBN for that.
Okay, yes, that seems obvious.
But I was able to, on Goodreads, merge that previous, whereas you can't on Amazon. And the thing that's really annoying with the Belinda is I had, over 50 ratings and whatever on the audiobook version, but you can't transfer it, which just seems stupid. It's like, why does Goodreads allow you to do it and Amazon doesn't? I know it's a new ISBN and that's all they look at. It's like new ISBN, new book. It's like, well, it's not.
Yeah. Maybe it's something that will change in future, because it's through collective agitation that terms change. And
okay.
So it's the same with Spotify. There was a stoush recently, and a really big self-published author, Brandon Sanderson, just campaigned. He said, you're not having my books on Audible. You're not going to have them until you give us better royalties. They did. So, that being part of the self-published community is great, because we can kind of, campaign together. But it is, I think it's a much fairer playing field as a self-published author, just from the start. Do you know what I mean? And then you just have to, try to get a better situation in some areas. But overall, the creative control is unbeatable.
Oh, 100%. Because one of the other things with Enemy was the way that it was categorized. It was put into categories that it was specifically a child of a veteran. And it's like, it's got so many universal themes about parenthood, and because I talk about my own parenting journey, and one of the triggers for writing the book was that my child started hitting me, and it really evoked my trauma, and I was going, oh my God, this is how patterns get repeated, because I was so close to hitting him back, because I was so overwhelmed physiologically by that fight or flight response. And I was like, well, that's a theme. That's, difficult relationships, not feeling wanted. There's so many things.
Relationships. Yeah,
absolutely. So I just felt like and the way that it looked when Enemy published it looked boring. It looked like a boring book, and there is nothing that is boring about Enemy. It is very fast paced, and I've written it in a YA style because I really easily bored. I have ADHD. I don't like to be bored, and so none of it is boring. And I specifically also separated out the chapters where I'm discussing more the war stuff in case people wanted to go, oh, that's that war stuff, and they're not interested. They can just read the fast-paced child story. Yeah. I did it for that reason.
Read it. You've sent me a copy this morning, and I just can't wait to read it. And I will be one of your reviewers on Amazon to get that.
Oh, thank you so much.
Numbers up. Yeah, I can't wait to read. It has to be incredible. You had a bidding war, like it has to be. There's no doubt in my mind. So tell me though, you had the machinery of Penguin behind you, and now it's just you on your lonesome with all your marketing skills. How is it going? And when did you re-release it?
So I re-released it, I think this year. The fact that I can't even remember might give you a sign of how great I am at all those details.
Was it February or something?
Was it?
I remember you saying at the start of the year.
Yeah, that sounds right. Probably.
Passing in a blur.
I don't feel like I have marketed it effectively at all. I feel like I have so far to go because I've been simultaneously trying to do too many things at once. So I'm writing multiple books at the same time. Don't do that.
You were telling me what you're writing for or something.
No. Yeah, don't do that. And I have been trying to build up my speaking career so that I have enough money to get some support with but that's its own thing, building up the speaking career. And then I occasionally, I sort of do a mad panic of, oh, I should write a newsletter. I should do this. Oh my God, I should do it. So it's just, there's so much to do.
So much. Yeah.
So my strategy at the moment is to try and get on podcasts because I really like talking. Hello.
You know what you need?
What?
You need a books publicist.
Yes, I need a books publicist.
I have just wrapped up my campaign with Nicole Webb. She sent me her report, and I have no hesitation in saying she is amazing.
Okay.
She reads your book, and she's got this gigantic spreadsheet of like different media platforms and sends you out. I'm in the Laotian Times newspaper today.
I saw that. I saw that today.
CEO magazine, Ticker TV, every stone is unturned, and she's only for books. Because that's different, So, but I feel the same. I have had a 8-week publicity campaign, but book marketing, it's got to be continuous, it's a massive time investment. And if someone could solve it for me and my authors, then I'll be very happy. But it's just rolling around in my head. There's so many books brought into the world. How do we get our rightful share of attention on our books and to maintain that? So they're not like one-hit wonders or 1 year and then they're dropped.
That's it. And for me, it's also, so if I'm one of the strategies that I've had is, you write about it in The Age, you write about it in, you write about these, but then, if you're pitching so I'm trying to get into overseas markets. And so I'm, I can write anything for anyone, that's just literally what you have to do as a copywriter and journalist, you just do it. But then the pitching process, it's like, oh, it's so tedious. I hate the pitching process. I just hate it.
Yeah.
And so then that's this sort of days and days of time wasting, or you'll kind of, I don't know, that whole thing. And then you have to come up with a whole strategy for that. And then you're going, is this even the most effective thing? Should I? And then you sort of do that for a couple of days and go, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I'll do this.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Yeah. And what's going to kind of pay dividends in a really concrete way, And
I know that I don't know what your philosophy is or if this is something that you've spoken about, but and this was certainly something even my agent said, is you write the next book and the next book can sell you know,
It's
you're
just,
trying to say,
yeah.
you keep writing the next one. And so
Exactly.
then I don't
Sells-
want to keep laboring on this because I need all the time, as much time as possible to write the next book. And
I think it's maybe pots of time, but like, you know, 15% of your time needs to be marketing your current book,
you
know, or you outsource that part of it. But you have your TEDx speaker.
Yeah.
What's your advice for authors who would love that? Love to do that. Did you apply with a topic?
I was very lucky. I got I had, when Enemy got published, I got a speaking agent.
Wow.
So I just, you know, they read Enemy and then said that they wanted me on their books.
Really?
Yeah. So there's one that's specifically for authors.
Do you mind saying the name?
Booked Out and Booked Out and Speaking Out. So
Speaking Out. Yeah.
Booked Out is often you might talk about more your writing process, or you might run a writing workshop. So you'll get that sort of gig through them. And then Speaking Out is often more, I have a more activism, you know, you're speaking on a topic, you're a person who speaks around that theme.
I see.
So I have that as a, and so through them as a speaking agent, then I got contacted because it was, you know, TEDx can be run by anyone. So it was actually just a school event.
Yes.
The first TEDx talk. And then they liked my TEDx talk that first year so much that they got me back to do the next one. And that next one ended up being, you know, had over 500,000 views, and, you know, so it was very well received. And then the third one that I did, I was contacted by Melbourne Uni, and they asked me, would I like to do it? And it was in freaking lockdown. And so we had this, and so it ended up just being, we were going to do it on a stage, and then we were going to do it in a studio. And then I ended up just doing it at home, and I just wanted to shoot myself in the face. It was just hideous.
A COVID low moment. That sucks. I attended my own book launch remotely in Melbourne.
Oh God, so bad.
My parents, my sisters were there, and it was at the Australian Institute of International Affairs. I would have loved to have been at my book launch. It was amazing. But yeah, COVID, the heartache.
What about your second one? Did you get a good book launch?
Yes, I did. Yes, it was perfect. It was.
Where did you do it?
I did it at Better Read Than Dead in Sydney.
Oh yeah, I've been there. Yep.
And it was just everyone I love was there, and it went really well. So it was really great.
Have you done a podcast on that process? Because I've got to do well, because when you're self-published, I don't know how to be. I've always done it, you know, it feels different when you're approaching a bookshop saying, get my book in stock and whatever, and have my launch here.
Well, I mean, Better Read Than Dead. I've had Better Read Than Dead on the podcast. They just have a fantastic program. They have book launches every night of the week, and for them, it brings in, you know, people who love books, and you know, you can buy a book after you buy the book that's just launched, and they're just fantastic. They handle all the ticketing and everything. There's no room hire fee or anything, and it's a beautiful venue. It's an iconic bookstore in Sydney. Some of them can be a bit funny if you're self-published, which I find crazy. Why would you turn business away? But, you know, it's not easy being a bookstore, but each to their own. But there are some that have a reputation for being excellent. Or, I mean, you can have a book launch anywhere.
Absolutely. But, you know, I like the idea of supporting bookstores. Just because, you know, going rogue doesn't mean that I don't.
Going rogue. Oh yeah, no, you just have to. I had a client who listed a book on a big bookstore in Australia, and they put up this big thing on their online catalog, sort of like a warning saying this book has been self-published. It may not have been edited. If you choose to purchase this book, we will not refund you. And I was like, just don't list it. Like, do one or the other. Don't actively try to dissuade someone from purchasing the book from you. Isn't that just surreal? And the author,
oh my God, that is.
Also, I was offended. This book may not have been edited. This book has been raised lovingly since the moment of conception. How dare you say that? You know, like, So, but that they are missing out on an increasingly big part of the market.
Yeah, that is pretty insane.
Wild, isn't it?
The idea that you would put that on. It's like, did you want to, if you're really concerned, have a bit of a flick through.
Yeah. Buyer beware.
Like if quality control is an issue, rather than doing that and bringing all your prejudice, like the prejudice. And like, I have read a lot of traditionally published books
that are terrible.
I
know. But do you know what makes it even worse? He had personally gone to the store and given them a copy to check before they agreed to list it, and they still put a warning on it. So I contacted someone I know, and they received an email from the Alliance of Independent Authors saying, did you have to do that? Because it's not right.
No, well, it is not right at all. And I remember when I was reading Enemy, like my book didn't have that many changes in the draft. Like, I didn't have that, once I'd submitted it, it wasn't, I had to do a complete sort of revision, but then that revision didn't get that much revised because, I'm usually the end of the publishing process for my clients.
Yes.
So he said, oh, this book is actually amazing because when you read your book aloud, and this is a note to authors, read your books aloud. That is how you do your best editing. Read your book aloud to yourself. That is when you pick up your most mistakes. I read my entire manuscript out loud, and that's when certainly the way that I have to do it, because I can easily skim or imagine.
Yeah, you can easily skim. Do you know Microsoft Word has a read aloud tool?
Yeah, but I like to perform it.
Oh, you're an actor, of course.
Why would I miss a chance to speak to an imaginary audience in my own
Your
room?
audiobook must be amazing.
I think my audiobook is the best version of it.
And you haven't received $1 from that, have you?
Oh, I mean, they paid for the rights to it.
Okay, they paid for the rights. Yeah.
So that was a separate, and I think now most publishers are trying to get audio rights as part of the deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
At that time, they were less into that. So I had a separate agreement with Belinda. Yeah. And then they paid me a very paltry sum for this 3-year because I didn't earn out my advance on that as well. So, I totally get that it's not a safe bet, but it's like, I just hope that if I keep talking about it, then enough people who it is the right book for will find out about it. And then, the word of mouth you have to hit the right number of mouths for the words.
You do. You absolutely do. But I just have no doubt that this is not the end of it. This is the beginning. Well,
unless I'm dead, it's not the end of it, because I'm going to talk about this forever.
So I love that passion. This is why I love my clients, because they have the same passion. They don't take no for an answer, and they genuinely want their book out. And some authors will say, well, if I can't do it the prestigious way, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I'm not that author.
No,
I don't have any ego attachment to, obviously we all want validation. And I still, that fantasy of going, I choose you. We all want to be picked. But I also I don't want to be told that that more and more it feels like the publishing industry is just picking people who have got a massive platform and just leveraging off that. And that doesn't mean that they're getting the best books out there. Just
for memoir, that is, it's maybe 1% where the circumstances of the story are so, which was yours. Although you're famous, so it doesn't.
I'm not famous.
Well, I mean,
I'm not in any way famous.
Well,
I've been on some, had some bit parts on some television shows. That is like a lot of actors that you would not say are famous. That is.
Well, I haven't. So when I was pitching, I was very much, I had no credits to my name. But they really are choosing, and they need to, because when you see that, instantly recognizable Paris Hilton, people will purchase that book. So, no, for sure. I mean, I think often those are not the most interesting stories to be told at all.
No, 100%. So we have to. I think the publishing industry likes to paint itself like, we are rarefied and love the work, but if you look at the people who are currently being published, that doesn't kind of match. because the people who are currently being published are celebrities, and you read a lot of their books and go, oh, I wish that somebody else had written this book that was a writer person. A writer person is a good person for writing a book. A celebrity, not always a good person for writing a
Sometimes
book.
they have ghostwriters, but do you know what? Carrie and Spare, I can't bring myself to read it, but he had the best ghostwriter in the world, but it's still Harry's, view on life, which is an incredibly privileged person. And people say bad things about that book, which is why I'm using it as an example. But even with a ghostwriter paid lots of money, you can't elevate it or it becomes fiction, right? So...
And you still are trying to capture a person's perspective on their own life. And if that person hasn't, I don't know, thought deeply about something, then what they have to offer you, like I did listen to the Britney Spears.
That's good, apparently.
Yeah, but it wasn't particularly deep.
Yes.
And I understand that she's also I could hear that she was trying to not overstep relationships, and she was trying to be respectful to existing relationships, and I think that is the benefit of having a total explosion of a family. They're all gone. So
yeah, I'm really sorry about that, though.
But so I think even there were moments of real vulnerability in that, but a lot of it was just kind of like, and that's fine. I read it, enjoyed it, but it wasn't, I would not say
it's not important literature.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you've been very, very generous with your time. I would love to see you on a stage at the Festival of Dangerous Ideas or something, because you can be such an advocate for the publishing industry and stuff. So it's just really exciting to know you. So thanks a lot.
And I'm going to be deep diving in all of your work and all of the stuff that you're doing to support self-publishing, because we need help.
We do need
hard. We need help.
It's an industry in its infancy, especially in Australia. In America, they've made leaps and bounds, but we're really not there yet. So that's part of the broader Hembury Books aim, is to change the industry for the better. So it's more author-centric, less publisher-centric.
Yeah. I think that's good.
Where can people get your book? Everywhere.
Everywhere. It's available everywhere. I had that American podcast. I'm going, I think I published it right. Can you just quickly check on while we're on the podcast? He's saying it's available here. I'm going, good. I did it right. Press the right buttons. Excellent.
Excellent. Okay, so it's called Enemy by Ruth Clare, and we'll look forward to seeing a lot more and hearing a lot more about it.
Great. Thanks you so much. Thanks for your time. Bye.